I was born in Detroit, Michigan, July 18th, 1943. I actually spent all my life basically in Detroit and that, except for when I was in military service and after I got married.
What was your early childhood like?
It was fine in that, I mean, I had some friends around me. We would take in, my one particular friend, Bob Parrott, his uncle had a whole attic that was free. So we went up there and we built an HO train scale. That was fun and that. And growing up in Detroit was a lot different than what it is today, considerably different. And that I have.
In what ways?
Well, crime, deterioration of the city of Detroit. I have to say that the last time that I was in Detroit was about 2 years ago. And some of the stuff that I saw, completely opposite of what I had grown up with.
Did you live in a suburban, I was in the city obviously, so
No.
what was the neighborhood like when you were growing up?
Middle class, factory workers, one of friends, well, Bob Parrott's father, worked at WXYZ in Detroit as a sound engineer.
What'd your dad do?
My father worked for Chrysler Corporation. He worked there about 30 years ago. Matter of fact, he retired the day that I left.
I don't want to jump too far ahead.
No.
So as you're growing up, you had radio? Did you have radio? At that time, did you have TV?
We didn't get TV until about, I think it was 1949 or 1950. Okay. But other than that, it was radio. Yeah, I'd be going, in the kitchen, we'd have the radio on. One person that I actually remember is a fellow called Bud Guest. He was on WJR, and every once in a while he would come up with these things that are called groaners, and they were definitely groaners on it. Yeah.
So 43 to 53, you would have been 10 years old.
Right.
The Korean War started right around 54 era. As you were growing up and starting to go to school and whatnot, were you aware at all that there was a war going on over in the Pacific?
Most definitely, because I had relatives who were in the Korean War, and that they really didn't talk much about it when they came back, but I definitely knew that they had been in Korea and that.
So what was high school like?
High school was kind of fun in that. When I was in high school, I worked on the stage crew for different productions that they had going on. Then towards my senior year in that, I was in what's called retail co-op, where I would go to school during the day, evening, I'd go to a job. I worked for, I worked for A&P, which is unfortunately no longer around, but that was interesting, definitely, especially one day when some guy tried to rob the store. Like a fool, young kid, I chased him, and I caught him. So, I mean, that was, like I say, foolish, idiotic. Yeah, I don't deny that in the least bit.
Yeah, my first job out of college was bag boy for a grocery store. Yeah,
same thing.
Bags, please. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So what was your at that time, getting out of high school? What were your aspirations? What did you plan to do?
I have to say that I really didn't have any aspirations. I got into the medical field, I guess you could say it, after I went to work for Harper Hospital in downtown Detroit. I worked in the X-ray department. I was an orderly, bringing the patients in and out.
This is out of school?
Pardon?
Out of school?
This is after I had graduated.
Oh, wow.
Did that, and let's see, did I?
So you
I
had,
think.
this was like your first job out of high school?
Well, no, my first job out of high school would have been working at A&P.
Okay. But
And
then
that
you
is
eventually
big.
got this other job with the.
Well, and then from there, through a friend, I ended up working at a dental supply house in downtown Detroit. And when that one gave out, another friend said, hey, we're looking for people to work as orderlies. I says, okay, go for it. I did, and that is where I got my interest in being an X-ray technician. So that
When
was,
did you first start hearing that there was another conflict brewing out in the Pacific about Vietnam?
would have to be the early 60s. Yeah, right after when Kennedy came in. That's another story. He was coming into Detroit, flew into the airport that was about a mile and a half from our house. So my boyfriend, my friend and I, we went over there and got in on that fun and games. So,
So what, you actually saw Kennedy?
yeah,
Wow,
from a distance,
yeah.
from a
sure.
distance. But,
So, let's move on to, you knew that there was a conflict going on over there.
Right.
Did you register, there was a draft?
oh
back
yes,
then.
I definitely was registered,
Okay.
definitely.
Do you remember
was there-
what, I mean, I know this is going a way back, but do you remember getting a letter in the mail? How did you find out that you were eligible?
Heard that had to register when you turned 18. Okay. When I turned 18, I think I may have gotten a letter. I don't really remember, but I definitely did register
So
for.
it was in Detroit, right? You registered
Yes,
in Detroit?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Was there any talk amongst your friends about what might happen now that you're eligible to go?
Not really, no. I guess you could say I waylaid it for 3 years because I didn't go in until I was 21 years old. And that I kind of decided, okay, do I want to be drafted, perhaps end up in the Army, Marine Corps, carrying a rifle, or did I want to be in medicine where I could help people rather than injure them? And that's so. That's
So you joined up.
Oh yeah, I joined up. I guess you could say I followed my father. My father was in World War I, so that goes back a little bit ways. And he was in the Navy also, so yeah.
So the idea then was you were going to join up the Navy. You already had some experience with the medical.
Only as an orderly.
Right.
I got my X-ray training in service.
Okay, I don't want to get too
Yeah.
far ahead.
Right.
All right, so walk us through you actually now are going to go and join up. How did you go about doing that? Did your dad drive you there? Did you drive? How'd you get there?
Believe it or not, I think I took the bus. For us from the east side of Detroit down to old Fort Wayne and that, and got sworn in, everything else, and then a group of us got on the train to Chicago, from Chicago up to North Chicago to the Great Lakes Naval Training Center for boot camp and that, so.
Now, I've seen movie after movie after movie of getting off the bus, about to be into boot camp. Now, keep in mind, we want details, okay? What was your experience? What was it like driving on the bus, and then when you get off the bus? I'm sure that some guy got on with a big wide hat and he just says, oh, welcome to the camp. We'd just love to have you. Coffee's waiting, cookies waiting.
No. We got in kind of late, basically. Okay, here's the barracks that you're gonna be in for a little while. Tomorrow morning, we start processing you in and that. Haircutting, I should say shaving, basically. Testing for different things and that to, find out what your interests were, what you might be qualified for and that. When I talked to the recruiter, I kind of said, I'd like to go into the medical field. Could have been, for all I know, it could have been dentistry or anything like that, but I just, got lucky and went into the medical service and that, and I enjoyed
So
it.
the test, because I'm familiar with the process, so they put you in your barracks, and then you had to go through this series of tests to see aptitude tests, basically.
Right,
okay?
aptitude tests, hearing tests, hey, you had good hearing, you might end up as the sonar man or something like that. It was, a whole battery of them that we went through in that, so.
So when did you find out that they were actually going to allow you to get into the medical field?
Basically, when I graduated from recruit training,
All right,
is that,
we're getting way ahead now. All right, I
Yeah.
want to hear about recruit training. Tell me about boot camp. What was it like? What was your first day? You're in the barracks. It's probably early morning, I take it?
oh yes, get up early in the morning, okay, march here, chow hall, eat, then we'll take you further on, test you, get you in there, get you all set, break you up into different companies, meet your company commander, who proceeds to try and scare everybody, but I looked at it this way. Hey, I'm 21 years old. I've got some life experiences, so I know that things are going to be, people are going to be yelling at you, screaming at you, everything else. Okay, let them go on it. I tried to be very, very relaxed about going through the training and that, because I fear if I got too nervous, I'd have problems in that. So I just tried to step back, let it.
You look fit. Were you fit back then? I mean, how difficult was boot camp? I mean, we're talking about push-ups, chin-ups, you're talking about all that. Meanwhile, somebody's yelling at you. I mean, how did you say you kind of took it in stride, so to speak? But
What push-ups? What chin-ups? Does that answer the question for you? It was mainly drilling and classroom, learning naval etiquette, how the Navy works, etc. And then drilling, and then at night, if you were selected, you had barracks watch, make sure that the place didn't burn down or anybody get hurt or anything else like that. Then we had a 1 week period that was called service week, where you were farmed out to different portions of the camp. Some went to the chow hall, mess hall, worked that, and other of us were farmed out to different portions in that. Trying to remember what I did. Don't remember.
So,
And that,
so once you got through boot camp, you said that was when they let you know that what you're going to be doing in the Navy.
right,
Okay.
right.
What was your reaction to it? I mean,
I was happy. I was, happy. One side story about when I got out and that was going to my next command. I was going to the USS Arcadia, which is a destroyer tender. They had it down there, it was in Norfolk, Virginia. So I go from Detroit to Norfolk. I end up in the chow hall because they didn't know where the heck the ship was. It took them about a week to get it straightened out. Got on a bus up to Newport, Rhode Island. Got aboard ship 3 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock in the morning, the ship left for Puerto Rico. Nobody in the family knew where the heck I was. Cruise down there before you can get the mail off and that. So that's when everybody found out where I was and that.
did you have any problem with seasickness or anything like that?
No. Destroyer tender is a large ship. It's what destroyers can tie up next to have work done on them. Maybe if they got a problem with an engine or something, we'd be able to do it. If there's welding that needed to be able to do it, rather than have the personnel have to go ashore for medical treatment, they would come up to the sick bay. We'd have sick call there and go from there on that.
Walk us through your routine. on that ship? What was a daily, I mean, I know it's different days, but what was your routine at that stage?
Get up in the morning, eat breakfast.
What time?
I think reveille was about 6 in the morning. Yeah, okay, fine. And then eat. Then sick call was at 8 o'clock in the morning. Basically what I did is just ushered the people in because I was just learning, getting acquainted with how things were run medical-wise and that.
Who was your immediate superior in that? There was a doctor?
Yes, there was a
Okay.
doctor on board ship. Another side story. Anytime anybody would come on board the ship, first place that they would be assigned is the mess hall to work there. Well, our division commander said, no, I am not going to have my people in medicine or dentistry work in the mess hall. So, okay, up to sick call, and work that, get used to it. Trying to remember whether or not we had anybody actually staying in the bunks in sick bay. I don't think so, because I figure, okay, if they were that sick, they're gonna get them off the ship and that, but we did have the capabilities of housing them there if need be. We even had a small surgical suite and that, so I mean, we were there to service the destroyers, and if they needed something, if we had it, we would take care of it and get them going on that.
So let's once again, I want to walk through the routine. So you get up in the morning, you're eating, and then you go to the
Sick
bay,
call.
right? And then whoever's sick comes in.
Right.
What were some of the symptoms? We're talking about colds and things like that, or maybe break an arm, or?
Mainly colds and that, not feeling good, maybe a little bit of flu and that, but I would say that when we were in home port, if it was a fracture, they'd send them out to the hospital and have it set there. We did have capabilities of doing x-ray on board the ship, surgery, dentistry, machinist mates.
Did you
etc.
hang out with the same crowd? With and whatnot, or did you fraternize with the other groups as well?
Pretty much the people that were in the medical section and that would hang out with them when we got down to Puerto Rico. I didn't have my ship's patch on, so technically I could not go off the ship until they got that sewn on for me and that, and once that was done, went in El Morro Castle and toured around a little bit, enjoyed it, and then we...
Well, you were from this area. You never, I mean, outside of Detroit, you never traveled to Puerto Rico before. So what was your impression of going to these foreign lands?
Didn't bother me. Didn't bother me at all. I've been very, very, very fortunate, my wife and I should say. We have traveled to various foreign countries since we've both retired in that. China, Australia, New Zealand.
All right. So the first stages here, now you're really kind of getting used to what the routines are and whatnot. But you already had some training as an orderly, so it wasn't like you were thrown into something that was completely foreign.
Oh, no. No. And then too, as I was growing up, before I went in service in that, they had a program going, civil defense program, where they would train people to act in case of an emergency, etc. I went through that. So I came in with a little bit, I'd say maybe a little bit more knowledge than some of the people did and that, so, yeah.
Were you always aware of where you're going next? So you're going to Puerto Rico, family finally finds out that you're still around.
Right, right.
So from there, where did you go?
Back up to Newport, Rhode Island. Spent, I'm going to say 3-4 months up in Newport. Then we went down to Norfolk, Virginia for about 3 to 4 weeks to relieve another tender that was, one was going to the Mediterranean and one was coming back. So we were just kind of filling in for them. And then back up to Newport. By this time, it's getting to be July, first part of August, and I knew that in August, I had orders to go back up to Great Lakes, Illinois for medical training, more getting into it, learning, ducking the helicopter blades if we happen to be doing something like that.
How aware are you about the escalation of it? Because we're talking now into the 60s where it started to escalate.
News reports and that, hearing about casualties, My Lai massacre, things that I remember.
You actually you heard about that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, the reason I was able to kind of keep up on the news is I had an aunt and uncle who lived, between Chicago and Great Lakes. And I could go there, visit with them, go there on the weekends, visit with them. If they were going out someplace, they would take me with them. So I got to learn things in that, keep up with the news and that. So that worked out good for me.
I want to go back a little bit because this is such a monumental. I was actually alive during this time too. Do you recall where and what your reaction was when Kennedy got shot?
Yes, my friend and I were riding our bikes over to his uncle's house, which was about maybe 8-10 blocks from where we lived. And I think we heard about it just as we were leaving, that he had been shot. Didn't know that the extent of it or anything, but we had heard that he was shot, and then later on, when I got back home and that, found out that that it was fatal in that. And then there was that period of mourning, and then the assassination by Jack Ruby and that, so. Yeah, it was.
Your neighborhood, I take it, this was something that people talked about?
Not really. We didn't discuss stuff like that very much in that. It was just friends.
Then let's go on to another subject before we have to get back into the military, but I have to know this because I
Okay.
grew up in that period of time. Beatles, remember that? at all? No?
I remember them. Didn't think much
you're
of them.
Elvis guy, right?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Oh.
None of them.
Really?
Really.
Not into the music at all?
I hate to say it, but I enjoyed soft, gentle music, not opera or anything like that. Just, I guess you could say, contemporary
Okay.
music in that.
All
Been
right,
that way.
I tried.
Hey, I know.
So back to, all right, so you're back in Norfolk. You're getting extensive, more training now.
Just
What
a
kind
little
of
bit.
training are you talking about? Because before you were kind of just learning the ropes, but what were the more sophisticated things you had to do now?
Well, let's see. Giving shots, drawing blood, transporting people using litters and that. I was already acquainted with what's called a Stoke stretcher. It's basically a wire stretcher that you can put people in. Actually, you can strap them in, it would be on board ship, and they could hoist them up through one of the narrow passageways and that. So I guess you could say generalized medical experience in that.
What was your rank?
At that time, I was a hospitalman apprentice. When I graduated from Corps School, then I got E3 or hospitalman. And after Corps School, I went from Corps School, Great Lakes, to the Naval Hospital, Great Lakes. I spent, let's see, 65, 66.
I got here from your notes, 64 to December 64 recruit training center, Great
Right.
Lakes. Then January 65 to August 65, you're on the Arcadia.
No,
No?
64, December 64, wait. January 64 to January 65
Okay.
to August of 65. Then from there, late August, early September, Hospital Corps School at Great Lakes, Illinois.
Gotcha.
Graduated in, let's say, December.
Okay.
From there, I went up to the hospital, worked there for, about 15, 16 months.
But that was, now you're talking about isolation unit,
Right.
right, and surgery. So tell us about that.
Well, no surgery.
Okay.
They were all usually patients that had communicable diseases, needed to be isolated until the disease had run its course, or they were found not to have the disease that they had. Meningitis was the big thing back then, because you're in a confined space, somebody gets it, chance for transmission is right there on that. Worked that for pretty close to a year. Then I went and worked in the surgery clinic in the hospital, greeting patients, getting their charts, getting them in to see the doctors and that. And
Were these surgeries that were just general surgeries because of day-to-day type of things, or was these people coming back from Vietnam?
both. If they were coming back from Vietnam and they were injured in that, the people on the ward would take care of getting them set up with the surgeons and that. Down in the surgery clinic, you could say it was more generalized things, run-of-the-mill, gallbladder, appendix, cysts, and that. So
Did you have any interaction with the vets coming back from Vietnam?
not really.
Okay.
No, not. I really didn't have any. I mean, obviously, I knew they were there, what wards they were on, and that. But as far as being with them, no, not at all.
So then from there, I understand in '67, you were in U.S. Naval Hospital, Chelsea, Massachusetts, for an
Right.
X-ray school.
For X-ray school, that was almost a year in length. Prior to going to X-ray school, I re-enlisted for 6 more years as kind of a guarantee that I would get the school that I wanted. And well, there learned different positioning, techniques to use, the different type of exams that are done with X-ray, using the fluoroscopic machinery. And at that time, they were just coming out with the automatic processing of the films. Before then, had to put them on a hanger in a dark room, dip them in the developing tank for X length of time, rinse them off, then over into the fixing tank, and then from there to the dryer and get it done that way. But let's see, I think, if I remember correctly, it took 7 minutes to automatically process the pictures. which was a far cry from having to hand tank them, as it was known as. So that was interesting. And then as the years went on, they got that cut down to about 3 minutes. And then from there, they went to digitized radiography. But that was after I was out of the service and that and my other job.
Did you have any idea about the conflict that was going on in the United States about this war? Because 67, we're talking a lot of things happening.
Definitely, definitely.
In Vietnam and people in the
Vietnam
United States.
people here in the United States protesting at that.
Did you have any opinions of that or thoughts about that?
Well, being in the service, you know, you're not supposed to have any opinion. You're supposed to be neutral. You do as you are told, etc. I questioned some of, you know, what was going on. You know, I hate to use the word draft evaders, but I just could not, in conscience, go with that idea. I mean, we have the history of the United States where we have been willing to help others in conflicts and that. We may not necessarily agree with them, and I think Vietnam may have been one of them, but still, that was, you know, part of the history of it, helping others, other countries who were unable to defend themselves and that. So, yeah, I was definitely aware of it. And about a year later, I had an experience that I did not appreciate whatsoever. This was after my wife and I were married, and I was in Cleveland, which comes after X-ray training and that. Went to church, and the minister delivers a whole sermon on against the military. I mean, he was flat out against it and everything else, and never went back to that church at all. I mean, just, that turned me off of that particular church and that, and said, no way at all.
So you got through X-ray school,
Right.
and as I understand it, 68, you were in the naval shipyard dispensary in Pearl Harbor,
No,
Hawaii.
no. Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, yes, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes, I skipped ahead. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cleveland, Ohio from end of December 67 to November of 68. And people will say, okay, what's in Cleveland, Ohio? But there's no naval stuff there. It was the Naval Finance Center. And that was interesting duty. Very interesting. When I was on duty, you know, after hours, it consisted of walking around the finance center and make sure that all the safes were locked. Really hard.
Now, I've
Really
never
hard.
been in the military, but I know enough about the military to know you've been trained as an expert X-ray technician, right? You've been an orderly before that. You know
Right.
how to give shots.
Right.
You
Draw
know it.
blood.
What are you doing in Cleveland checking locks?
That was after hours. That was after my normal routine there. We had a dispensary there for dependents, military personnel, you know, like your recruiters and that. They could come in there, be treated, get what they needed. If they needed an X-ray, okay, went to me. If they needed blood work, went to the lab. You know, things like that.
All right, that makes sense.
And then we were also supposed to be the liaison for any injured service personnel coming through Cleveland to make sure that they got down to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I think there were only maybe 2 or 3 times during the time that I was there that one of us had to go and do it. I never did.
You were in uniform when you went into town and things like that?
Oh, yes.
Any reactions to that?
No, the only reaction was, as I had stated earlier, at that church. But other than that, no, nobody hassled, nothing else. I would take the bus from where we lived in Euclid, Ohio, down to where the Rapid would pick up, take the subway into Cleveland, get off, walk over to the building and that, and up to the floor.
You mentioned earlier you got married. How did that happen?
Well, my wife and I had been dating for about 5 years, and
Was she
that.
from the area?
Yeah, she lived about a mile and a half from where I grew up in that, so. And we met, girl across the street from us was having a party, and we met there, plus had another good friend of mine who happened to be going to school with my wife and that, so kind of got interwoven and everything else on that one. But no, we dated for 5 years and kind of figured, well, getting to be about time, settle down, yeah, in the service, sure, no way. No way, Jose, on that one. But yes, we got married the week before Christmas. And this year, if we both make it, it'll be 50 years that we've been married. So, 2 great children, great daughter-in-law, great son-in-law. We've got 5 grandchildren. 3 of them happen to be in Grand Haven here, and we interact with them extensively. Like, take them to swimming, take them to piano. Mom and Dad got to go someplace. If they don't have a babysitter, Mom, Dad, will you watch them for us? Going to swimming meets, having fun that way. The oldest will be 11 in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And the youngest one is 7, so.
So, you had upped again for 6 years, so then what happened? You got out in, is that right?
I re-upped.
72 or?
Yes, got out in 72. I re-upped in 66.
Okay.
That was in order to get my x-ray training in that, and then on to, Cleveland. And that was.
So what about, sorry to interrupt, but you were in Pearl Harbor though?
That was
That sounds
960.
like, you have here, in my notes, you have some things you wanted to talk about with Pearl.
Well, yeah, my wife and I would been there maybe a month and a half. We were going around the island, stopped up by Diamond Head, looked out onto the Pacific Ocean, and right in front of us was a bunch of Japanese Zeros going by. Deja vu, wondering what the heck's going on. They were filming the movie Tora, Tora, Tora. But still, you're just watching that happen. You're thinking, oh my God, not again, and that. But no, it was an interesting time, to see that happening, and also working in the dispensary. Every once in a while, we'd hear loud explosions, which is when they were filming Tora, 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 and have pictures of the mock-up of the Arizona and that. And I will say this: if anybody gets to Hawaii, do not take the civilian cruise around Pearl Harbor. Go to Pearl Harbor, take the military cruise. That is the only way that you can get on board, get on the monument, memorial to the Arizona and all the men that were killed there. And they have tall wall with the names of all of them inscribed on it. And as you're walking through there, it's basically open air type of a thing. But as you're looking up the cross pieces and that, the American flag flies there all the time, which is that. And when we were there, there was just one, I think it was a gun turret that was above the water. It may have rusted away by now, but they still had oil coming up from there to, they just couldn't get it out in time and that. And last time, let's see, I'm trying to remember, last time we had been to Hawaii, I think they had completed a bridge from one side of Pearl over to Ford Island to make it easier to get there. Otherwise, you had to take I can't say a canoe, a small boat to get from one side of the station to the other, and that. So that was interesting, and I have to say that my whole experience in Hawaii was very, very nice. I mean, interesting. Got to see a lot of things, do a lot of things in that. My primary job when I was there, I was driving a X-ray bus, mobile X-ray unit, where we would go around to ships and take chest X-rays of the servicemen, send them into a doctor in Honolulu to read them, get the readings back, forward them onto the ship and that. Of course, going across the island, that got to be very, very interesting. They had a governor on the bus, so I could literally stand up and drive it and not get up a whole heck of a lot of speed to go over there, going over the Kaneohe Marine Corps base there and that, but then going up into the pineapple fields to different places that were there. And that got to be interesting and fun driving that around. And then, oh man, I was there when the Enterprise blew the hole in the deck. You want to talk about something that, we didn't know. Nobody knew what was going to be coming in. We heard that there were casualties. Be prepared. Well, I think they pulled in about 95% of the ambulances on Oahu, had them lined up where the ship was going to be tied up, took off, and the police had closed down one lane of traffic going from Pearl Harbor to Tripler Army Medical Center for nothing but ambulances going up there. Yeah, that was quite an experience.
So
And
were
that-
you involved in any of the those people? Or you just witnessed it?
I think I drove, or I was on standby to drive an ambulance if need be. Didn't have to, so I kind of got to go aboard, but only really as far as the sick bay. I happened to run into a fellow that I'd gone through corps school with and that, but
He was on
the Enterprise. He was on the Enterprise, yeah.
What was that? You basically just ran into each other?
Just ran into each other, said, hi, hey, heck, how you doing and that, because he was treating, had to be available to treat people there that might have, minor injuries, not necessarily needing to go up to the hospital and that. So, we just basically said, hello, how's it going in that? But that was the extent of that one.
Have you ever talked to him since?
No,
Yeah.
no, we never crossed paths again. And then also, while I was there, they brought in the battleship New Jersey. I don't want to be in front of those guns. I don't want to be anywhere near them. I mean, they might look, you know, nice and gentle. Not when you're looking right up at them. My wife and I got to tour a little bit of it. They had what is called, you know, an open deck, open gangway for military personnel to come aboard and tour the ship and that, you know, see what it was all about, how it was done and that. That was interesting. I had fun with that one.
So when did you make the decision that it was time to get out?
Well, that was in '72. My wife and I had our first child, Matthew. He was born up at Tripler and that. Had orders to Corpus Christi, Texas, and had to make the decision, okay, I've got 8 years in now, be maybe 4 years in Corpus, give me 12. Am I going to stay in? And I said, no, I decided it was time to get out. I felt I had done my part to protect freedom and liberty for the country and that. So I just kind of decided to get out.
So where did you go from there?
We came back to Detroit.
Was there a reception for you, or was there any kind of a welcome back kind of thing, or?
No.
But no bad
Nothing.
experiences either, though, huh?
Just that one that I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. That was the only, what I would call bad experience in that. But other than that, no, none whatsoever.
So
That-
you had a kid and you've got your wife. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna become an X-ray technician, or what are you gonna do?
Well, I had the training to be an X-ray technician. Before I got out, I filled out papers, you know, trying to get, to get a government job. Came back to Detroit. We lived over on the east side of Detroit for, about 10 months or so. And the first, be about 4.5 months, there was a hiring freeze in the government. They weren't hiring. I happened to pick up a job with a local gastroenterologist doing x-rays for him, drawing blood, doing some of the lab work, covering the office when they weren't there. And then in April of '73, they said, hey, come on over to the VA. The VA at that time was located in Allen Park, Michigan. It was kind of a unique situation because the government did not own that land. It was owned by Ford. And Henry Ford had said, as long as this property is used for veterans and that, the government will pay $1 a year to use it. Can't beat that. I mean, hey. But the hospital was starting to outlive its usefulness and that, asbestos and everything else. So they decided to build a hospital in downtown Detroit. And my last 4 years of working were down there. The interim period there, went from Detroit to Van Buren Township, which is near Belleville, about 5 miles west of Metropolitan Airport. And we lived there for 73, about 27 years we lived there. Our daughter was born there. Had some great friends, and they're, I have to say I enjoyed it.
What was the experience? I mean, you finally got the job at the VA, right?
Right, right.
So what was your job there?
Well, I started out doing general radiography, hands, arms, legs, abdomens, you know, the generalized stuff. The exams with barium, exams where they had to inject contrast media to see the kidneys and that. And then also doing what is called tomography, which is sectional radiography. The machine moves so far and can literally go through sections of the body to, you know, just see get a clearer picture of a particular area if need be.
Now, these veterans were not just Vietnam, these are World War II vets?
All World War II, World War I, Korea, the whole gamut. I mean, we'd have in there.
Any stories that you can recall that, I mean, it must have had an impact on you. You were a veteran yourself and you've helped people your whole career.
Right, I helped people my whole career.
What'd you see there? What was your experience there? Good, bad, and everything.
I have to say that in general, it was good. I mean, I enjoyed working there. I worked with a great group of people. The doctors were great. Learned a lot. Got to do a lot of things from the what I would call general radiography. I then went into what is called the special procedures section of it, where we would take and inject contrast at a very good clip, and then take a series of quick x-rays and that. But I have to say that when I was doing special procedures in that, I probably ticked off a couple of people because I would do my darndest to make sure that there was no air in the syringe or the connecting lines. And the reason for that was when I was going through X-ray school, we had a patient who died of an air embolism. So I was extremely conscious of that because I did not want to have the feeling that I might have caused someone's death in that. But I would always check, always make sure. And if I was training anybody, I would impress on them, make sure that there is no air in that syringe or the line. And well, doing the special procedures and that, the CAT scan came into being, happened to be right across the hall from our special procedures lab. I would just kind of wander over there and learned about, doing that, assisted them. If one of the techs happened to be off.
That's over with? Okay, go ahead.
I would substitute for them and, work together. There were two technicians that were doing that.
Jerry, I don't want to get you to talk about anything you don't want to talk about, but what was the conditions of the VA at that time?
Well, as I say, the hospital in Allen Park was getting old. It needed to be, have things done to it to bring it up to modern standards and that. And they were doing a good job of trying to upgrade them and that. I can remember when they would be taking up the floor tile, plastic sheeting up all over the place. Weren't allowed to go in there unless you were properly attired, wearing a mask and that. So, yeah, it was interesting. Then we moved to downtown Detroit, newer equipment, everything else. We had CAT scan and, the newer one, not CAT scan, came after CAT scan, the
Couldn't
thing.
tell you. Don't-
Yeah,
It's
no,
okay, don't worry about
it
it.
just
So
slipped my mind.
In terms of the staff and whatnot, you said was very good, the doctors were very good. What condition were the patients in that you were dealing with? You say World War I, World War II, we're talking about people that were not only
Yeah.
disabled necessarily, but also
Elderly and that, they were, they wouldn't understand sometimes what we were doing. We had to explain to them, and that, what we were doing, how we were going to do it, what they could expect was going to happen in that.
But Jerry, it must have had an effect on you. I mean, to deal with, these are heroes that came before you.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I've always tried to treat people with respect, and, doing the x-rays and that on them, I guess you could say was kind of like an honor. Here I am helping them out. Yes, we had some that were disabled. It took a little bit of work to get them where we needed them, how we needed them, but still, you tried to be as gentle as you could, not cause them any discomfort, and, move them easily, as easy as you could. I mean, there were times where you couldn't really be as gentle as what you would like to be in moving them. I mean, if you're moving them from the x-ray table to the stretcher, and if they weren't even, there would be a bump where, you're going from the table over to the stretcher, and that, tried to make that as quick as possible and as gentle as we could, but,
Did you feel
really
there was
good.
enough staff? Was there enough people there, you think?
In the x-ray department, yes, we had a good staff of people. We could have, every room would be covered by at least one technician. Some of them we'd have, 2 or 3 because of what we were doing there, but, our staff was good. Of course, we always kind of dreaded it, come July 1st, when the new residents would come in. Yes, they're learning, but they also seem to think that they know everything. I hate to disparage residents in that, but they were learning, and I felt that some of them did not. I felt that some of them lacked compassion towards the patients in that, and I had told my wife that if I ever got sick on the job, there were 2 doctors that I would let treat me. Otherwise, get me out of there.
I find it interesting because I'm just recalling back to the earlier part of our conversation when you first became learning all that. I think that one of the reasons you may have had that attitude towards these new guys is that you didn't have that attitude when you first got in. That you actually were compassionate. You actually did realize you were learning.
Oh yeah, I was learning, but what I was doing affected the health and welfare of everybody. And you need people who are healthy, who will look out for you, you look out for them, you take care of them, and that. If you don't mind, I'd like to kind of go back to when I was in Hawaii. As I said, you take care of them, they take care of you. Part of my job there was about 8 o'clock in the morning, sick call. Well, every once in a while, had to go over to the brig. You want to talk about an experience there? Oh, man. I mean, you walked in that door, and every one of the prisoners had to snap to, and that, yeah. And then when they closed the doors, you're thinking, okay, am I gonna get out of here safely and that? But no, it was run by the Marine Corps, so it was very, very strict and that. Yeah, that was fun and that.
We're gonna wind up here, but I have two other things on here you said you wanted to talk about. One is the space capsule, and the other is return of the first man on the moon.
Right. I was actually able to get, I'd say, within 10 or 15 feet of one of the space capsules that had come in, and that it's something to behold, the way the heat that is generated on when they're coming back in is tremendous. Well, our dispensary, I should say, the Pearl Harbor, was responsible for providing logistics to the space program if they were coming down in the Pacific Ocean near Hawaii, and that had to make sure that they had all the supplies that they needed, that, if they needed something, we would make sure that they got it, have it on hand for them, be transferred over to the appropriate ship from the supply section and that. But we were more or less the medical liaison for it if need be. And then when the astronauts came back from the moon, that was something to see. I mean, Apollo, I forget which ship it was, but it said, +3, meaning the astronauts coming back, and then being brought out the hangar bay and being welcomed by the governor of Hawaii, being welcomed by Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, which at that time happened to be Admiral McCain. And I would not have wanted to have his job because at that time his son was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. So, yeah. But, just being there, being part of the welcoming of these brave men who put their lives on the line because nobody knew what they were going to run into, what they were going to experience. And of course they were hermetically sealed into a trailer, and that had to be offloaded from the ship onto another carrier for transporting it. And then it went from Pearl Harbor, the back route, to Hickam Air Force Base, and then they flew them out. But getting, just getting to see those men and that, be there when they returned, and that
Yeah,
was
the
something.
current generation don't quite grasp the fact that that event, later event, and all the technology that went into that eventually gave us these
cell
things.
phones, yeah.
Yeah. Gotta tell that to
That's
my
true.
students, they just don't get,
Oh.
they don't make the connection. You were there, you actually saw them come in, that's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
I even have pictures
Wow.
of them and that,
I
and you
was
can see 'em.
standing, I was in upstate New York at the time, I was standing, as a young boy, looking up at the moon, and I thought to myself, good grief, they're walking up there.
Yeah, and watching it on TV, them getting out of the space capsule, walking around on the moon and that, which there's another funny story that goes with that. My wife and I were watching it. We hear this commotion outside. Couldn't figure out what it was. There was a brick wall between us and the other set of apartments. Happened to look over there. There were some young kids breaking into the apartment, one of the apartments over there. Another fool hollered at them. They took off. I took off after them. I actually managed to catch one of them only because he tripped on a wire that was across the road. Brought him back to the police, and I felt sorry for the guy, because as we were coming back, I had him kind of in a hammerlock. One of the other people around there turned around and slugged him. And I told the officer there, I says, if he tells you that somebody hit him, believe him. It wasn't me, it was somebody else. You just hold off and, no. Can't do that.
So Jerry, looking back, how do you feel like your experience in the military helped shape who you are today?
Helped to teach compassion, understanding of what the servicemen, servicewomen go through, the loneliness that can creep in there and be there. They don't have really any family or friends when they're there. Oh, we were very lucky. We made some great friendships with some of the people. One of them actually took care of our son when my wife was sick with the flu for a couple of days. And then there was another fellow that we hooked up with. He happened to have gone to the same church that my wife did. And when I would go there for Bible school, vacation Bible school and that, he'd be playing the organ. And he happened to also have orders to Hawaii. So we just kind of hooked up. The only problem was he was Army, I was Navy. So you know what goes on there. There's that rivalry. But no, Bruce and I, we got along great. Of course, when it came to football, I didn't care who was playing University of Michigan. I'd be rooted for the other guy. Well, Bruce went to University of Michigan, dyed-in-the-wool, maize and blue fan and that, but no, we'd get together, we'd have fun. We were fortunate in that we had that. There were other people who didn't, have that. So, connection to home, etc. Yeah, it was great, and we maintained that friendship for a good number of years until he passed away about 2.5 years ago. I kind of miss when the Army-Navy game is on, sending him an email saying, hey, bombing you, fixing you good. Or if U of M was getting beaten, I'd just, harass him about just for the heck of it, having, kind of having fun with that. Yeah, it was fun. And that, I have to say, I enjoyed it and that.
Well, Jerry, it's been a real pleasure.
Well, hey, it's been my pleasure. I hope that this, I hope people, can see a different aspect of the military rather than fighting. And that, no, I guess that's kind of the reason that I decided to go ahead and, do this interview and that, hey, who knows? Maybe somebody seeing it will say, hey, maybe the military isn't so bad after all. I mean, yes, it has its it has its bad points. I will not argue that in the least bit. And I have to say that I admire these people that go out on the front lines and put their lives on the line for freedom, and that may not be our freedom, may be freedom for another country in that, but still, the willingness to do that is tremendous, especially in this day and age where it's an all-volunteer military force rather than the draft and that. I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted about the draft in one aspect. Yes, it gives you a pool of people that you can draw from to do this hard job. And also, you have to admire the ones that volunteer to be in the service, and that, and the service offers great opportunities to learn, to experience in that. But if you are fortunate enough to get into a section of it where you can learn and apply that when you get out of the service, and that you know, you get to respect and understand what these people are going through.